Hello. Give me 1 second. All right. So basically, today we're going to go through, I kind of emailed everyone. I hope everyone saw the schedule that we are going to follow, and it sort of follows the regular curriculum for lifestyle medicine in the book. That way it's just everybody knows what to expect, and you don't have to like guess, oh, we're doing sleep now, and now we're doing, when I did this test, we did jump around a lot because we were just getting interested in certain topics and stuff. But for this, I think it'll just keep it simple if we just follow in order of the book. And it does make some sense. So let me go ahead and start today. Every time we meet, or most of the times at least, I'll do a little bit of information about certifying and the process of certifying, and we'll go through today what the test is going to look like. But the next time I'll also go through kind of, we'll talk about the report that you have to do and things like that. So we'll do a little bit of that every time as it becomes more and more relevant. And so today, and then, you have to attend 10 CME in person, all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the exam first. So first, about the lifestyle medicine exam, it is going to be 150 questions for all of us. It is only 120 for non-physicians. And what we determined, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but what we've sort of surmised over the last few years is that the 30 questions that they don't have are on the clinical studies that are sort of like relevant to lifestyle medicine. So some of those questions are going to be like the methods and the results and what were the limitations. So that it does get tested for physicians and not necessarily for non-physicians. That sort of makes sense, like we are scientists, we've done a doctorate, but that is going to be on our test. So if you've ever heard anyone who's not a physician say, oh, they weren't even on that test, because I have heard that from like a nurse. And I was like, oh, that's kind of because those are the ones that they've sort of removed for non-physicians. As you know, non-physicians can get certified, but like I said, it's a different test. So it's 240 minutes long. So that's 4 hours long. So you have 4 hours to complete 150 questions. They do accommodate for nursing mothers. They accommodate for like disabilities. So, it's at a Prometric testing center. And then it's over the November to December. So this course goes until October 14th. And then after that, I will have 2 weeks where everybody can access these videos. And because the test starts in November to December, so that's kind of like the last 2 weeks of November of when we're going to be really focused on lifestyle medicine. So that's when I'm going to be releasing those videos. There's also the conference, if anybody's going to that in Denver this year. And that's where you can get 10 in-person CMEs. So that kind of is all taking place at the end of October. So then you can take the test November to December. And then there's also information on their website, the ABLM website, the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, which is separate, by the way, from the ACLM website, where you have purchased probably your board review material. So the ABLM is a separate website, and this is the web link where you can find the competencies and weighting. This is the competencies and weighting, and I have this in my book as well. You can follow along there if you have that. But essentially, these are the different competencies, the topics that we are going to follow this schedule. This is the percentage of each topic that's covered on the exam. And then out of 150 questions, this is how many questions that translates to. And so that's kind of like, that's in my book, but like I said, but it's also in this lecture, so you could see it here. And so you could see like some of the bigger things that I wanted to point out are that nutrition science assessment and prescription is basically a quarter of the test. Like I mentioned, there's key studies, and a lot of those are centered around nutrition. I think 100% of them actually include nutrition as part of a lifestyle intervention. Maybe not some of the physical activity ones, because that is a bigger section too, physical activity, science, and prescription. But there's a lot out there on nutrition in the key studies I'm talking about. Obviously, there's other studies out there in sleep and all this stuff, but in the key studies that we have to know, most of them will fall into this anyways. And then the other sections are sort of like, a dozen questions here and there. This is a short chapter here, the role of physician health and physician's personal health. And then our day-to-day, today's content will also be a short chapter. And then as we go along, if anybody has questions, please let me know. You can interrupt, it's okay. There's going to be some editing of the video. If you don't want something included, you can always let me know. If you do have to talk, if I'm ignoring the chat for whatever reason, I didn't see something, please just let me know. I just want this to benefit you all the most. And so just let me know if there's anything else that you want to talk about or questions that you have. So the objectives for the first section that we're going to cover today, and a little bit of the second section that we're going to cover today, are going to be these here. I'm not going to go through them like word for word right now, but we'll cover each one. Each one has a separate slide. So we're going to start with this first one: define lifestyle medicine and describe the unique role of LM. And this is a question that you do get tested on. Whenever I say that, by the way, sometimes I don't remember if it was like on one of my practice questions or if it's on the test itself. But this is so fundamental to what we are going to be doing. So I do think that this is something we all have to know. So lifestyle medicine, it's like the very first thing in the book. They give you 3 separate definitions, but the essential point is that it's entirely evidence-based. You do therapeutic interventions. They're not just like sort of like what we, eat healthy, maybe it'll work. It's like, no, this will work because we know that the studies have shown that this will work, and we're going to prescribe something to you that is a lifestyle change as a therapy, and it's a therapeutic intervention, and it's the primary modality for treatment. It's not like a side thing or a secondary. We do this before we do pharmaceuticals and surgeries, or at least alongside those if somebody's in sort of like a dire situation where their ASCVD is like 30%. So you kind of want to do something like always lifestyle. There's always lifestyle as a part of the treatment. In lifestyle medicine, if you are going to be practicing with lifestyle medicine principles. So that's sort of the definition that they say, is that it's evidence-based lifestyle therapeutic interventions as a primary modality to prevent, treat, and sometimes reverse chronic diseases. And the unique role of lifestyle medicine is that it does sort of like allow you to assess the person's entire lifestyle. And then along with that, it also allows you to help with them changing the behavior, and including in this section in the book, they do mention this intensive therapeutic lifestyle change treatment programs where people attend for 30 days at a time. And they're a structured day, like a very, very structured day where they do cooking classes, skill building classes, physical activity classes, sleep, meditation, all that stuff is baked into the program, and it's 30-day long. And then you're meant to sort of like follow that lifestyle for the rest of your life. And this is the exact program that one of the leaders of lifestyle medicine, his grandmother actually attended when she was getting 6 months left to live for chronic heart failure. And she found, it was like in the 70s, and she attended this program as a kind of like a last ditch effort to kind of like live. And she changed her entire lifestyle. He was a boy at the time, Michael Greger, and he was a boy at the time, and he became a cardiologist and devoted his life to lifestyle medicine. But basically, she lived for 30 more years. After giving 6 months left because of her severe chronic heart failure diagnosis. She lived for 30 more years after changing her entire lifestyle. So it is really powerful. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm going to be talking about it like this is like the best thing since sliced bread. So, but that is kind of like a very cool kind of like treatment programs that exist around the country. And some of them are, they're not necessarily residential. Some of them can be day-long programs. And there might be some in your neighborhood that you might not even know about. There's not in my neighborhood that I know about, but maybe there will be. Somebody will start one. Maybe I'll start one. I don't know. And then the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that are kind of like what the primary recommendations are whole food plant-based eating pattern, like a primarily whole food plant-based eating pattern, regular physical activity, restorative sleep, and stress management, avoiding risky substances, and then positive social connection. Those are the 6 pillars. So if somebody is doing, there's prescriptions, specific prescriptions that we do within each one of those. So if somebody is doing all of that, then they will be fine. So the next objective is going to be to describe the lifestyle medicine core competencies as identified by a national consensus panel. So there was a few years ago, some people met and they made these core competencies that they want all lifestyle medicine physicians who are practicing lifestyle medicine to have. And this is on the test. So this is on the actual test. I remember there was like a question where it's like, this is which core competencies is for like electronic or like not electronic, but reporting your patient successes or something like that, or it's something like that where you have to know the core competencies. and maybe you have to know which specific type of skills each one of these core competencies have. So leadership, knowledge, assessment skills, management skills, and office and community support. Each one of these is defined in my book. Let me just grab my book here. One second. We made a table on this because we know it's on the test. Give me one second. I'm just gonna grab my book. I have the other book. One thing that's not on the test in this book is that timeline on the very first page, page 5. And that we just included so that you could see like the history about lifestyle medicine, that it's like decades and decades old. Okay, so now back to core competencies. Within leadership, this is on page 6 now. Within leadership, there is promoting healthy behaviors as a foundation of medical care, practicing healthy behaviors personally, so follow by example, and then creating school, work, and home environments that support healthy behavior. So that's about like reorganizing your life so that it supports your endeavor to follow the lifestyle medicine principles. The next one is knowledge. So that's basically, knowing all of this information so that you can give the right prescriptions to patients. And the next one is assessment. So being able to assess people's social, psychological, and biological predisposition to health behavior. A lot of that has to do with like their attitudes and being able to assess that, and their readiness and their willingness. So this is all part of what we're going to learn in lifestyle medicine curriculum, and then be able to perform a history and physical relevant to lifestyle medicine. And they have their lifestyle medicine vital signs. So all of that is like going to be part of this curriculum. And then the next one is management skills. So that is being able to establish good relationships with patients, help patients manage their healthy behaviors, collaborate with their families, and basically being able to help manage the patient's effectiveness in changing their behavior. The last one is office and community support. So develop and apply office systems and technology. It's one of the ones that I mentioned. Aim to practice as part of an interdisciplinary team. So this is lifestyle medicine is all about collaboration with other community support people. And they actually give you instructions on like who you should be collaborating with and who you shouldn't be collaborating with. These are licensed professionals. These are not licensed, like those kinds of things. So that'll be part of this curriculum as well. And then being able to measure outcomes, which like I mentioned, there was like some kind of question on that on the test. And they might change up the exact nature of the question, but there was that. The next thing is describe the importance of lifestyle medicine in treating the nation's lifestyle disease burden. So this one is about the idea that the US, most of the disease burden that we see could be entirely modifiable by our lifestyle choices. And so lifestyle medicine is like a critical component and very important to addressing the disease burden that we see. So the top 10 leading causes of death are almost entirely modifiable by lifestyle. And then also very few people in the US are exhibiting traits of healthy behavior in all the areas of lifestyle, including nutrition, physical activity, stress management, social connectedness. There are very few people who are everybody could be improving. There are very few people who are exhibiting like all 6 of those all the time. And then the last thing is within this section, it's sort of like a couple ways that we could be helping to improve the healthy behaviors of our patients is to develop a trusting relationship with our patient and to invoke like a strong multidisciplinary patient support system. And those 2 are key elements for helping patients to change. And so I think like, this is sort of like, I think it's like some of this chapter, the reason why I think it's only 4%, a lot of this stuff is pretty obvious, whichever answer sounds good, like, and promotes lifestyle medicine is the answer that you're going to go with, right? Like, so, is lifestyle medicine important in modifying the nation's lifestyle disease rate? Yes, it is. So you should just go with like those kinds of answers for all of this. I don't remember a specific question on that. Social determinants. So the next objective is going to be on your determinants of health. And so this was an interesting area for me to understand, especially coming from emergency medicine. And it really helped frame kind of like the the mentality of patients and what they could be coming, what kind of baggage they could be coming in with that is determining how they're behaving with your recommendations. And I liked kind of like understanding this, but the idea of the social determinants, especially being adverse childhood events. So those people are at higher risk for limitations in, and then they're at higher risk for mental illness and self-harm. And they're less likely to follow or to put value in like a futuristic viewpoint of their life and what that could, and how a lifestyle change today could make that a positive outlook. And the next one is lower socioeconomic status relates with poorer health outcomes. And the next one is racial minorities receive lower quality and less access to care. So those are sort of determinants of somebody's health, like what is not necessarily what they've decided, but it determines their health outcomes. Physical determinants are things like air pollution, secondhand smoke, water supply. So we have somebody from the suburbs of Detroit here. So war, famine, natural disasters. Those are some of those are like obviously unavoidable. And then the next one is health services and literacy. So we have different care-seeking behaviors. Some people who live in the doctor's office, some people who want to avoid it until they're like 95. We have language barriers. There's different trusts in the healthcare system and in physicians. There's also different lower health literacy. So people who, I actually have, a patient of mine who's from the medical field who I'm just surprised that she, like how low health literacy some people could have. And whereas other people who are not from medicine, they're picking things up like this. So it's like, you can be surprising with that. And people with those people, it's correlated with higher hospitalizations and worse outcomes. And then the higher education is actually correlated with a higher literacy, health literacy. And the next one is genetic and epigenetic predisposition. So lifestyle medicine does make it a point to be like, yes, we all dealt a deck of, a hand of cards that we all have to deal with, coming from our parents and their parents and whatever it was. And that's our DNA. And that does explain a part of our health profile. So that explains 10% of our health. But epigenetics, which can be modified by our lifestyle choices, which are what's the concept of that is turning gene expressions on and off, explains the rest of it, the 70 to 90% of our health outcomes that are genetic could be modified by our lifestyle with epigenetics. And there are some studies, the Dean Ornish study on prostate cancer is really where a lot of this can come from, even with cancer, where they saw, like when they did lifestyle changes on people, they saw how like 500 different genes that were implicated in prostate cancer were downregulated, and ones that were beneficial for preventing prostate cancer, 50 of them were like upregulated, and they learned about new genes that they had no idea that were involved with prostate cancer. And so you kind of have like a really powerful thing to say to your patients with this. So this might be, I think there's some question on this somewhere. Like I said, sometimes I can't remember if it was like on the test or practice questions. And then the next one is individual behavior. So this is where we can modify people's choices, right? So our diet, our physical activity, or tobacco or alcohol use, those kinds of things are like their individual behavior. We can help modify that. And we can also help with policy making. So things like their seatbelt laws and laws that are like, well, it's my choice if I wear a seatbelt or not. Well, no, like we're going to make it a law so that you do get penalized so that we can keep you safe. Like those kinds of things are something that we can help with as physicians too. And there's like physician advocacy as part of this curriculum. So I hope that gives you a good overview of that. Okay, so the next section in this chapter, they do go through a set of studies that are not necessarily key studies, but you do have to know the gist of what all of these studies are sort of telling you. So half of these studies have identified, and the InterHeart and the InterStroke studies are international studies. So they went through several countries across the world. And basically, they identified like 10 to 12 factors that were internationally relevant to somebody having more chances of having a poor outcome, like a heart attack. And then the same thing with the InterStroke study, internationally relevant factors. And almost all of them were entirely modifiable, if not all of them were entirely modifiable by lifestyle. So if one of the factors were high blood pressure, you'll see that is one of the chronic conditions that we can modify by lifestyle. So all of those were proof for the importance of lifestyle medicine to identify risky behaviors and to help people change and prevent chronic conditions before it actually turns into a bad outcome. So Chicago Heart Association Detection Project Industry, you'll see a lot of Chicago type kind of like programs that come out. CHIP is like one that they came out with like a set of lifestyle medicine lectures that people can purchase and use for shared medical appointments. And so you'll see a lot of like Chicago, but that's another one where they identify these are the factors. And if somebody modifies these factors and they're like, 80% less likely to have a heart attack. Framingham Heart Study will go into depth about, it's a key study. And there's like over like 100 papers now in the Framingham Heart Study compilation. But again, like there's like aspects of it that are like identifying factors, multiple risk factor intervention trial study. It's like the MR FIT study. And again, they're identifying risky factors that were involved with cardiac diseases. The Nurses Health Study and the Nurses Health Study 2, you'll see pop up a lot across this book as well. So those are like decades-long research projects of hundreds of thousands, or I think over 70,000 nurses, where they cross-section analyze them for different types of things. One of the ones that I like to quote to my patients a lot of times was the one for MS flares and sugary drinks. So what they showed was that nurses who had MS were able to modify their disease. So they can't get rid of MS, right? So like, but you can still do something that modifies your disease. What they did was they took away sugary drinks. That's all they did. They didn't take away anything else, but sugary drinks from one group and they didn't for another group. And the one that they didn't take away had 7 flares in a year. And the one that they did take away sugary drinks had 1 flare in the year. So like I said, I mean, it's like, so the implication is that sugar is bad for MS. And the next one's health professional follow-up study. Again, all of these are, by the way, all of these, they go into detail in your fundamentals book, but I'm not going to do that because it's not as relevant for your test. The next one, Adventist Health Study. So the Adventist community, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, I didn't know this, but they are vegetarian by nature. There's a group of Adventists out in Loma Linda, and Loma Linda is one of the blue zones of the world where people regularly live to be over 100. And so there was a lot of studies about their lifestyle and comparing that to the other areas in the world where people regularly live to be over 100. And so Adventists, and if you ever hear any criticism about lifestyle medicine, the one thing that you'll hear is that it's like propaganda by the Adventist community, which I don't believe. But one of the top researchers was at the one from this Adventist community. But that's just like one person, right? Like he just happened to be from it, and they have a famous institution there, Loma Linda. But they did a series of health studies on their community as well that identified risk factors and how that leads to bad disease. And it's all related to risky behaviors, right? And then the Lion Diet Heart Study. There are series of diets, the Ornish Diet Study, the Portfolio Diet Study, the Diabetes Prevention Program Diet, the Lion Diet Heart Study, that we are going to have to go through in detail, and we're going to have to know what exactly each diet recommended. The Esselstyn diet, which is like no oil. So we're going to have to go through that, and that's going to be part of this curriculum. And there are a few test questions on that. So it's like this diet recommended soy or olive oil was a component of it. It's like really detailed. So we are going to go through that, and we're going to know that for the test, okay? So, but these specific studies, you don't need to know other than just the fact that they exist and that they help identify, risky behaviors that lead to bad outcomes. And the next section is comparing and contrasting to other fields of health medicine. So this is something on the test. I don't think there's several questions on this as you practice as well, but there's also a question on this where it's like you have to compare lifestyle medicine, I think, to conventional. I'm not sure, but that has come up a lot. But basically the idea is that with lifestyle medicine, we view the patient as an active person, not a passive person. So that's one thing that's very different than conventional. And so they have to actively be engaged and actively make choices rather than they just have to follow your orders. They participate in making their own action plan, and they have to decide, they have to tell you that they're ready. So they're an active component of the therapy. And then we also, the second thing is that we do ask them to make a lot of lifestyle changes, whereas in conventional medicine, we don't ask a lot of lifestyle changes from the patient. We give them very specific plans. Every single patient is making lifestyle changes. So those are the main things that we are going to say that, to compare lifestyle to conventional medicine. But as you can see, a lot of people do like to compare lifestyle medicine to other kinds of medicine. So integrative, functional, naturopathic, alternative, mind, body, and you'll see they do, they're all trying to do the same thing, right? Like we're all trying to keep people healthy, but they like to distinguish themselves. Lifestyle medicine, they do like to distinguish themselves from all of those other fields. So for example, from naturopathic, we don't like promote supplements. If somebody needs a supplement or they're like vitamin D deficient, whatever it is, we give them it, but it's part of their therapies. We don't just like promote supplements without like strong evidence base for why we're doing it. It all falls within sort of like the very the conventional Western ideas of evidence-based medicine. So you can't just like decide something's a good idea and just sort of like give it. You have to kind of like really follow those guidelines. And so that's kind of like the idea between lifestyle medicine and naturopathic. But there's other things too. And then there's some things that like, for example, acupuncture is promoted in lifestyle medicine because there is evidence that that does help. So there's some things that we do include and they're very related, but the approach that we take and the idea that we have to get a board certified, test to actually say that we're certified in lifestyle medicine to practice in it, is different than a lot of these other ones. Whereas like, so for example, integrative and functional, you could be any kind of practitioner, like a PA or an NP, and you could take the test. Nothing against that, but lifestyle medicine did something different where you have to be an MD or a DO. So it just tries to set itself apart that way. And again, they are different on their content, like functional medicine and integrative medicine are different. And so there is some question on this, but those are the main things that I said about lifestyle medicine versus conventional medicine is a big thing. And then that lifestyle medicine stays within the evidence-based framework over like, other things like integrative, functional, naturopathic, all that stuff. Okay, so it says indicate the place of lifestyle medicine on the spectrum of treatment options for chronic diseases. I mean, I don't think this was on the test, so I just put, it's foundational, it's a priority. Without it, disease only continues to worsen. You can keep adding blood pressure medicines, you can keep adding higher doses of cholesterol, but if they're not going to make a change in their lifestyle, that's what you're going to have to do, right? So without it, diseases can be reversed. So this is really important, like that concept of reversing diabetes, reversing heart disease, deprescribing, that's all very important. People who are attracted to lifestyle medicine in terms of patients, they're people who don't want to be on meds. And so we have to be comfortable with deprescribing. And I have had to deprescribe people because their blood pressures were just too low when they changed their diets, A lot of times I'm actually just, going down on their doses, but I've had to deprescribe as well. Describe the efficacy of lifestyle medicine and its impact on disease pathophysiology. So the one that we will have to know back and forth, like for the exam, it's going to be the diabetes prevention program. I think there's going to be like 5 questions on that. It's a Medicare reimbursable program that you can send your patients to. And it showed that the studies leading up to the diabetes prevention program showed that lifestyle medicine choices were better than metformin in lowering your A1C. And it also, part of the research that goes into this program is that lifestyle medicine can reverse disease. So for students and endocrinologists, this is going to be really relevant for, obviously, I think you probably already know about this program, but it's all based on lifestyle medicine principles. I think probably most of you do know about this program. And that's kind of it for this section. And I'm going to just pause while I switch to the next section because we have to cover a little bit of that. So give me 1 second and then I'll take questions. Even if we go over, I can stay for questions. So there are, let me just, can you guys see this fundamentals of health behavior change slide? Okay, good. Because I don't know if Zoom was following what I did, but you can see this fundamentals of health behavior slide like for the next section. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding. How do I do this presenting? Okay, present over. Okay, so this section, there is a lot more tables from this section in my book. So that's going to be chapter 3, and I did not reproduce it like I did for the first section in the slides. So all of this information is going to be in my book, and we're going to be following that closely. It's also in the manual. Obviously we get everything from there, but like, as you can see, this is kind of the way the content is written in the manual, whereas like we put it in tables in the book. So that's the major difference. But let's go ahead and get started here. So these are the objectives. This is 10% of the exam. It translates to about, I think, like 12 questions or 14 questions, I don't remember. But all of these, I'll try to, indicate when I think something's important or not, like I have been. But all of these are going to be interesting and important and relevant to the practice of lifestyle medicine. So we will go through that a little bit. So demonstrate key elements of conducting patient readiness assessment and stage match responses. So a readiness assessment is essentially what you have to do with each patient to determine if they are ready to do what you think you have to tell them to do. And the reason why that's important is because if they're not ready, you could turn somebody off from potentially making the right choices for them, right? So if they're not ready to hear it, I have patients come in, I'm never going to stop eating meat, or I'm never going to do this. And you really have to think about how you're going to approach those patients, because they're clearly not ready. And sometimes sometimes they're very anxious about something that just happened to them. And I'm thinking back to my emergency medicine. Basically, a trigger event just happened, right? Somebody just had a heart attack or something like that. And they're coming in to see you, and now, they're anxious. So you really have to think about that. So they give you an approach. So there's key elements of conducting patient readiness assessment and stage matched responses. It's on page 15 of my book. And so basically you can see if somebody is stating, like, in the patient comment section, if somebody is stating, I don't want to change, I don't need to change, then they're in the pre-contemplation phase of their readiness phase to change. And at that time, the appropriate response to those patients are motivational interviewing with positive psychology. So it's all kind of laid out in this table on page 15. And the idea is that their confidence level, their readiness level is like 0 to 3. You can even ask them to rank that. Like, how confident are you that you can make changes in your diet? How ready are you? Those are the exact questions that we actually have to ask. And it's like, no, I don't want to, I can't. Then you will rate them as a 0 to 3, and then you will use motivational interviewing. So one question could be, how will you know when it's time to change? Or, with motivational interviewing, there's going to be a lot that we're going to be talking about in this section of what exactly that entails. There's reflections, like, you tell me that your goal is this, and this is the behavior that you have. So showing them the discrepancy between what they say they want and how they're behaving is another strategy. There's reflections, there's interviewing. So all of that, we're going to go through all of that. But the next stage is contemplation. Somebody's like, they come to you and they're like, I've thought about changing, but they've never done anything towards it. Then they're in the contemplation stage. This section, this stage of readiness is still motivational interviewing. And your response is, are you considering a change in the next month? You try to get them to sort of like give you a time frame for that. And the next stage is preparation. So it says, I am ready to make a change. They haven't done anything yet, but they're ready now. They tell you they're ready, and they're confident. So that you score 7+, and for that you do cognitive behavior therapy. So then you troubleshoot with them, like, what are the ideas that you have? What's the action plan that we're going to make? This is what I think will actually result in a difference in your lab work or in your outcomes. And where are we right now to get to that point? Maybe you start with 15 minutes of exercise a week and you work up to 150. So that's kind of like this is the planning stage, preparation stage. The next one is the action stage, where they say, I am changing. They're actually taking action. And again, cognitive behavior therapy, what is giving you the most trouble? How can your work support, how can your network support you? And the second to last one is maintenance. Somebody's like, I have changed, I'm done, I don't need to think about it, I'm done. So you're doing well, you just keep helping them. What obstacles can we help you with now? And the last one is termination. I have no desire to return to my old habits. Like, they're just done. They're like, I've never wanted to do any, this is the only thing I want to do. This makes me the most happy. And so that's how, those are the key elements of conducting a patient readiness assessment and what your matched responses would be. And it's in my book, so you could see all of that there. And so you would need to like know that for the test. That part is in the test. It's sort of like, what stage is somebody in and what should your response be? That part is in like the practice questions and in the test. Describe the process of building effective relationships with patients. Okay, so this is going to be on page 18 of the guidebook. The idea between an expert versus a coach role. So an expert is somebody that you go to give you the final recommendation. Okay, I think that you should be doing a whole food plant-based diet. You know, you're going to be doing 150 minutes of exercise per week. You're going to be doing strength training every other week. This is my opinion. I'm an expert in this field. I'm going to give you the opinion. Versus the coach role, which is like helping them and being supportive of them to try to make those changes. So an expert doesn't really have to do what a coach does, which is listed on page 18, but essentially it comes down to not being a jerk. So using inclusive language like we or us, when we using people first language. So what that means is like you are a person with diabetes, you are not a diabetic. And that's like called people first language. That comes up in a practice question, I think, maybe not on the test, but that's an important thing is to sort of like, that's what people first language means. And then the next thing is asking permission to get a weight or always get a weight in private. Sometimes those are really, really sensitive topics for patients. So if you know something sensitive, like they're drinking or they're less likely to tell you the truth, then always try to get that in private. And ask permission sometimes to approach those things if you know they're sensitive. And then make sure that your patients are feeling ready, they feel empowered, and that they have access to a good support network so that they can feel successful. They can feel like they're going to be making the changes. Okay, so now we're going to get into the motivational interviewing, cognitive behavior therapy, and positive psychology techniques. Actually, we're just going to do motivational interviewing and cognitive behavior therapy. Positive psychology is actually a whole chapter on its own. And so we're going to leave that for them. So this is on pages 19 through 22 in your book. And I think we're only going to have time for motivational interviewing. So I think I have to take my daughter to music class actually. But we'll do motivational interviewing. So this is for the first two stages of somebody's readiness level when they're thinking they don't want to make a change, let's say, or they have thought about making the change. They're not saying they're ready to yet. So for motivational interviewing, you have to kind of like roll with the resistances. You have to remain non-judgmental. You have to kind of like listen, encourage the patient to share their stories. What is your side? What is making you say you never want to eat meat? One of my patients, he grew up on a dairy farm. So I'm like, I don't want to put that down. I'm not going to start with like the meat industry is so terrible. Like I'm never going to say that to that patient, right? So you kind of have to roll with those resistances. You have to let patients talk. And you may need to redirect sometimes when they're rambling, but you have to let them explore their ideas and their thoughts about things. The next thing is empathy. You have to show understanding and share patients' feelings. So things I've said are things like, I'm never going to ask you to do, I think it's very unfair that this is happening to you. A lot of people are like, this is my parents. They both had high blood pressure. They both died from heart attack, and they say that it's so unfair. Like you have to kind of be really empathetic. Empathy fuels collaboration. So the next one is contrast between present and their goal, which is kind of what I said. Show the difference between where the patient is and where they want to be and allow the patient to form their own conclusions. So you say you don't want to die of a heart attack and you're smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Like let's think about that for a second. How can we make you want to do something different? And then support self-efficacy. So build patient confidence in her and his ability to succeed. So you've already accomplished so much. You're doing great with this one field of area. You've already quit like for 3 years, and that was wonderful. How can we rebuild on that? How can we prevent relapses? What was it that triggered you to go back? How can we prevent that? How can we make a plan for that? So you support their self-efficacy as much as you can, building their confidence, and saying you've done everything already. You can do this. And then there's other things. There's core skills, the ORs. So you ask open-ended questions to do all of the things we just said. You do affirmations, you give reflections, and then you're constantly summarizing. So this is the summary of what I'm hearing. And then there's also the 5 R's of motivational interviewing, which are relevance, So make sure that it's whatever you say is consequences to the patient. The risks, so understanding the risks and the rewards of behavior change or not behavior change, understanding what their perceived roadblocks are, and then repeating. Sometimes you have to repeat yourself a couple times before it kind of gets through. So those are sort of motivational interviewing techniques. Any questions on that and on anything we talked about? And I'm going to pause there before we go into cognitive behavior therapy. There's a lot in CBT, which is it's all here, just so you know. So there is going to be a couple questions where it's like, you know, this is the patient has come to you. They've said that this is where they don't want to do anything. It's always going to be like that, you know, like they don't want to do anything and they say they're not ready. So what is the appropriate response? So you have to look at those responses and say, one of these is motivational interviewing, the rest are CBT, right? So so today we did motivational interviewing, try to practice that, try to understand that. And then the best way to, you know, understand it is to try to use it sometimes. And then we'll do CBT next time. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions. Does anybody have any questions? Was this okay? Is this what you guys expected?
Yeah,
I
had one quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned a question book. Is there a question book you think is good?
Yeah, so when I studied, I did the multiple choice MCQs for, you're talking about question bank kind of book? So first of all, there's like 1,000 questions out there that somebody put on some kind of question bank website, which I'll get for you for next time. So next time, how about next time I'll start with like the different question banks that you can have, okay? So
okay,
that you have, but I used the book, it was $60, and my two study buddies didn't use it at all, and they did fine. But I know myself, and sometimes unless I'm quizzed on something, I think I get it, but I don't. And so that's just how my brain works. So I thought it was helpful. The problem with the question book is some of the questions are poorly worded and some of the answers are wrong. So you do have to come back. You can come back to this study group. I can help you through that. If you got something wrong and you're like, well, I don't think it was wrong, or, you know, what are they trying to say with this answer choice? They try to explain it. Sometimes they accidentally copied the last explanation for this one and you never get an explanation. So there's a few errors in it, but it still provides a question bank. And then somebody, like I said, made another question bank. I'll get that for you guys next time.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go. We made a lot of progress. There's like a few more, obviously we're gonna have to make, we're gonna talk about the next thing, but I think this is a good stopping point. Next time we'll finish up this chapter and that'll be the end of, that'll be what we do next time. So if you are reading along, make sure that you, make sure that you do, if you wanna read through the first two sections, the first two chapters. If you haven't gotten your books yet, then you can do that when you get it. But that'll help you with following along with this course as well. Okay? Take care.
Actually, excuse me, can I ask you, sorry, I just have one question. So you mentioned, I mean, I have this one book, your book. What other book are you talking about?
That is what I'm using. That's what I'm using. That's what I'm using.
This
oh,
one.
The other book is this one, the main book that they send you when you buy the 30 CME online.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't put this as, okay. All right,
yeah, most
awesome.
people will get this because the 4th edition, I only have the 3rd edition, but I think they'll get the 4th edition coming out soon.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Nupur, I have one question. Other than main CME event in Colorado, do we have other small ones also, plant-based
Yes.
or something, right?
I'll get that list for you guys hopefully next time too. Maybe the time after that, because next time I'm going to do the question banks. But there are other ones. I think that there's something called like the pea pod one.
Yeah, and plant something. I think there's something in New Jersey coming up or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think actually the ABLM website has it on their what counts. They have it on their website for what counts for in-person CME.
Okay.
So it's on their website too, but I'll try to find it for you. Okay.
Sure.
I also had a question about the core competencies versus like, I mean, is it worth, I don't know if anyone here has done the core competencies. Is it worthwhile to do? I have a tendency to do like all the things, but I just I don't want to like unnecessarily
what they say about that is that it's really good for understanding how to practice, not as good for the test. but because there's a lot of things in it that, actually there was stuff in it that wasn't in this book that was on the test, and we'll talk about that. But I just basically captured those things, so you don't need to like do it, but for the test, but if you want to like really understand, like, you know, they have a series of people that come and talk to you. It's like a lot of different kinds of things. And then like somebody comes for the, you know, and then, yeah, it's just like a lot of different kinds of topics that are not all relevant for the test. And they present things in different ways, you know, that might, you know, if you get confused, then I did it too. I did it. But sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not going to remember that for the test, and I'm just going to think about it for my practice, you know?
Okay.
So it's up to you. I'm not going to say no, like, you know, I did all the things too. Like I said, I did it in the multiple choice, I did the core competencies, but I don't think it's needed for the test, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it is good to understand the topic and get a depth into it, but not exam focused. For the exam, board review manual is better, but to understand the topic in depth and just you can enjoy, understand it more to the core, not exam oriented, but then for the information of the topic, it's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go because I do have to take my daughter. But it was so good to meet everyone, and I can't wait till the next time. You can email me any feedback you have, okay? I love feedback. Take care, bye.
Thank you.